Welcome to the Alain Guillot podcast, a podcast about life, leadership, and money matters. Our guest today is Noe Alvarez. Noe is the son of Mexican immigrants, and today we will speak about his Native American roots and about the book that he wrote called Spirit Run, a 6,000-mile marathon run through North America's stolen land. Noe, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, Noe, I'm going to tell you a little bit something. The podcast is about you, but let me just tell you just two things about me.
Mm.
About 3 months ago, I took this 23andMe DNA test, and it turns out that I am 26% Native American. So I feel that I'm part of the same bloodline as you are, and I feel like I'm talking to a brother.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm glad you said that because oftentimes our heritage, gets lost. And that's what I talk about, that in migration, sometimes our story gets lost. And so the work that I've been doing and a lot of us are doing is trying to recuperate and restore our relationship to our past and to our history. And so our heritage oftentimes gets lost along the way. And so, yeah, so it's about taking back our story and trying to find healing in our heritage.
Okay, so Noe, your book is in part a healing, a spiritual healing, and it's also a memoir. And it starts, you start by telling us the different characters that run in this race. But I wonder if we could start by you telling us about your mother and father, how they got into the U.S., where they come from, what is their relationship with the Native American uh, heritage, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, thank you. So the book that I wrote is a working class narrative about indigenous and Mexican people, but it's first and foremost a memoir about my parents and myself growing up in Yakima, Washington. My parents are from Mexico, in the region of Michoacan, Pacific Coast area, and they lived very impoverished. Right, my dad was. At one point in his life out there homeless, and so he and my mother were escaping tragedy. They were escaping very intense situations, and so they came out here for a new beginning and landed in Yakima, Washington, which is in the north west of the United States, and to become farm workers. So for years they were in the orchards picking apples. My mom still currently works in the fruit packing warehouses where she sorts fruits endless hours. Right now it's cherry season, so it's double time, it's rigorous. And so much of that experience informed me growing up. I grew up, we couldn't afford babysitting, and so I grew up oftentimes sleeping under an apple tree in the orchards when my parents woke me at 4 o'clock in the morning and then just dropped me under a tree, and then I'd wake and then I'd help them pick apples. And so my reality was very much in the orchards, very much around fruit, very much in cowboy country of Yakima, right, where it was farm owner and farm worker. Those were the two realities, and so we weren't always treated well. And so for me, I had a love for the land, but I saw what it was doing to my parents, right? Like, working on the land was something not to be, proud about. It was something that wore you down. And so my dad always told me, get out when you can. There's something better out there. But I always had a connection to the land, but I didn't want to connect to it that way. I wanted to connect with it spiritually. I wanted to connect to my past, my parents' past, which come from Purepecha and Nahuatl origins in Mexico. But a lot of that gets lost, when you're starving and you're trying to find a way, you don't, that story gets lost. And so for me, it's about, how do I find healing in this story? How do I find reconnection to a land that displaced my people, that we over harvested? And so yeah, that's what it's generally about.
Native Americans in Mexico, all the way down to Peru, sometimes they feel shame for the heritage. Sometimes they want to hide their own language and culture. And of course, I mean, we're exposed to all these other luxuries of the modern world, and we don't necessarily fit in. And many other times, as we have seen from the news of the Canadian uh, schools, so many times society try to force that culture out of the native, try to kill not the native, but the culture itself, leave the man intact, but kill all this tradition that she has.
Right. And so there's a lot of persecution for being who we are. And so we adapt, so we sort of do things in silence, we do things in obscurity. And so some people just sort of do what they can in this simply. And so for us, a lot of that got lost, right? There's a lot of tragedy in the indigenous communities in Mexico, a lot of persecution down there, and then come up here all the way to Canada, right? So you see that with the Sequetma community that it just came out in the, NPR, New York Times, about the buried children, right, in Kamloops. And so in a community that I ran with. And so we've been telling these stories orally, and so we've had record of these tragedies that people didn't believe, right? And so we did our part to try to put ourselves out there. And so now I think there's a beautiful movement with Peace and Dignity Journeys, with the run that I participated in for this, and I wrote about, is that we're coming out in full force. We're tired. We're saying we're out there. You're not alone, and that we're taking back our humanity, because we've been displaced for so long that we no longer feel like we have to hide. We no longer feel like our shame around our story. We're trying to bring healing in our story. We're trying to help people who are lost. And I'm trying to speak through this book to individuals who may feel like the story resonates with them. If you're a working class, if you feel like your identity is misplaced, like you're trying to find yourself on the land, like I'm talking about all that. It's trying to recuperate our story in the landscapes in our community. And essentially that running is, it's all about carrying your community forward. That is what I'm trying to drive here, is that you can't do it alone. We have to reconnect with our community and carry them forward in everything that you do.
Okay, so let's go back to your story. So you grew up underneath the apple tree, metaphorically speaking. But you go to school, you happen to be a good student, and you even get a scholarship. So tell us about that part of your life.
Yeah, so I mean, my parents didn't go to school, and the narrative was always go to school. That'll save you and save the family. And so I never thought that I would get into college. I worked hard. I did my best. I applied the work ethic of my parents to doing something what they said was better. And so I got into college, and I kind of broke under the pressure. I went to a really good college and got a scholarship, and didn't know what to expect. It was a cultural shock. I felt alone. I didn't know how to assimilate. I didn't know. I felt like I was a traitor, that I had abandoned my family. They were working in the warehouses, and I was here, on the college campus. And so I had a lot of guilt around that, a lot of pressure about saving my family financially, right? Like I felt like college was a thing that was supposed to help us. That was supposed to get me on the right path. And then I wasn't doing so well in college, right? I felt like I was struggling. I just wasn't prepared. And so I kind of I had a breakdown, and I was 19 years old, and I dropped out. And so that was even a bigger shock, because so much was relying on me to go to college and do something with myself, because my dad would say, it's either college or the fields. And I felt like those were my only two options. And I was terrified of going back, terrified of being stuck, terrified of bringing shame to my family, and being stuck in the orchards where people weren't treated kindly.
And how did you discover about this peace and dignity journey race?
So I was doing bad in school, so I took skipping classes, and then a friend of a friend of a friend, decided, hey, come go to the student conference. I went to Oregon, and then there's this elder who was a representative and an organizer of the run, and he spoke so beautifully about what it is to take back your humanity, to what it is to run, what they were doing. And they were saying that they would run. It's a run that happens every 4 years from Alaska to Panama. This was the first time that it was going to happen, and another run from Argentina to Panama. So it was about indigenous communities coming together in a relay style of race, in sort of prayer and spirituality, and reconnecting with communities. And the way he talked about it just really hit me in the heart. It really hit me in the spirit. And I said, this is the education that I needed. This is where I need to be. And right then and there, I decided this is what I was going to do, and that's why I dropped out of college. Told myself, um, I feel like this is where I need to be. And so bought a one-way ticket to Canada, and I joined them in northern Prince George, BC, Canada, and didn't look back. And so that's where the journey has taken me.
Can you give us more detail about the Peace and Dignity race? How long has it been going on? Who organized it? You said it's every 4 years. So yeah, has it always been continuous? Just let us know as much as you can about it.
Yeah, so it came to fruition in 1992 when a group of elders, indigenous elders from all of North, Central, and South America got together and said, we need to do something about our indigenous communities. We need to do something to reconnect and empower our communities. And they decided that it would be done through running, physically running, and connecting in the way of ancient tradition, which is they sent out messengers to connect with the communities and bring back medicine, to bring back messages and how to communicate with your community. And so it's sort of just, it's about building relationships. It's about having ceremony. It's about getting us to move again and to be human again. And so what we do is that we run in relay style, have ceremony at the beginning of the day, and then we end with ceremony. And so it happens every 4 years, and it was supposed to happen last year during the pandemic, but it got delayed. And so I was supposed to plug in back into it. And so it's getting bigger every year, every 4 years. When I ran it, it ran through the coast of the United States down into Mexico and Guatemala and into Panama, but it's now running through the East Coast. It's running through Midwest. It's running in Jamaica. It's running in other parts of the country, the world. And so it's like, it's spreading and it's thriving, and people are really finding a home in the Peace and Dignity Journeys movement.
And tell us about you. You as a runner. Have you always been a runner? And also, you mentioned that other people can join. So it's definitely not an endurance race. I mean, it's endurance. I see it more as psychological endurance rather than physical endurance. But so, tell us about the physical condition that you must have in order to participate.
Yeah, no, it's funny that people ask me how I prepared for the run. It's like, I guess I was always a runner. As a people, we were always good runners. We had to run from danger, run from immigration, run. I wanted to transform what running meant. I wanted to make running powerful again. And so for me, I didn't run. I wasn't, I played sports, I did whatever, but I didn't think of running on those terms where it was a spiritual thing, it was a healing thing. And so for me, I wasn't prepared, and so what motivated most of us was we were running for the stories. We were running to connect with elders and do ceremony and hear what elders had to say to us. They wanted to share with us their stories of what it meant to be connected to the mountain, what it meant to protect the water, what it meant to fight for, drug addicted youth, what it meant to fight for the decimation of forests. That's what it was about. We ran with bundles of staffs, like with bundles of feathers on them that represented prayers that people wanted us to carry. So we were literally carrying physically the stories and the people wanted us to take with them. And so it was a visual reminder of our obligation to our people, the obligation to ourselves and to our land. And so that's what motivated most of us. So when you looked at us, we didn't look like runners. You know what I mean? We were doing the, what we were always good at doing, and that was communicating with our people. And so, so I think I didn't really, I don't think I was prepared for it, but when I connected with people and when I saw the things that I saw, it gave me such a fire that I forgot that I was running all those miles. And on the run, there's a saying, we said, running is the easy part. It really was. It was, running was a symbolic thing. It was like all the things that we were carrying, that was the struggle. Like, we were having to get along with one another, right? We were having to sit with ourselves for 6 months, 4 months, however long you were on the run. We had to contend with that, and then running in the forest all by yourself. So I was running every day. I was running for a different reason. One day I was running for my mom. Another day I was running for my dad. Another day I was running for very specific things that they told me. One day I was crying. One day I was happy. There was so many different emotions every day. And that's what running was. And so those were the motivations for running. And if you forgot why you were running, it was going to be very difficult. right? If you were there just to burn calories, you didn't last very long. You had to ask yourself why you were there. And you had to tell yourself, you know, you had to run for something greater than yourself. And that's what it came down to. What is it that you were trying to dedicate yourself to? What was that run dedicated to? And so you dedicated your run to something different and something special every day. Today I said, I'm going to dedicate it to my mom. I'm going to dedicate it to the rain. I'm going to dedicate it to this elder, to this one youth that we connected. That's what you do. You dedicate it to something greater than yourself.
And there were many indigenous rituals, I guess, after the end of the run, or how do you guys get together to perform the rituals that you guys did?
Yeah, so definitely. So we had indigenous community people from different indigenous communities representing the run. We had people from Canada, the indigenous communities of Canada, Alaska, Shippewa Nation, Alaska, Arctic Village, Mexico, the Seri Nations, the Tohono O'odham. We had all representations. But see, that was the beauty of the run. It was messy. It represented the messy nature of humans, right? That we all have different experiences and different ways of honoring our lands. So when we came into a community, we let the communities share their ceremonies with us, and we participated in their ceremony. We wanted to honor their ways and then carry that knowledge to the next community. So we didn't come in and impose our ceremonies. We came in and shared them with us. And so we would have ceremony at the beginning of the day, which involved picking up staffs and deciding which story we were going to hold, and then closing at the end of the day with ceremony. And then running itself was the ceremony. That's what it was, singing our songs. And so it was beautiful. People had different ways of honoring their land, different ways of singing and dancing, and that was the beauty of the run. And that's what we were learning. And so and there was a lot of discussion about what it meant to be a runner, what it meant to be indigenous, what it meant to be working class. It was an ongoing conversation. So it wasn't always beautiful, right? The run wasn't always beautiful. And I write about that because I wanted to be honest and authentic that, hey, struggles happen, but it's that we were coming together around this one thing, this medium of running. We decided that running was going to be the thing that connected us spiritually, physically, everything, So that's what mattered. And I wasn't trying to shy away from that. That like, it wasn't a beautiful run. It wasn't all perfect. Like, that's not how life works. And that's not how life is. You just take it a day at a time and one step at a time, but that there's beauty in the rituals of running, and there's beauty in trying to restore your story.
Right. So running was a way of connecting with the rituals, with your tradition, with the other people, but also it was a way of cleansing the body and the mind. And you mentioned that many of the runners were recovering addicts. So can you tell us more about who the runners were and what are some of the stories that they were running from?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I write about that. Like, I couldn't have told this story without them. They really had an impact on my life. And a lot of them, like I said, um, there was different layers to what it meant to be a runner and indigenous and working class, and what it meant to be human. And so a lot of these people, including myself, we carried our traumas. We were there to heal, and we all had different expectations of the run. We had different expectations of ourselves. We had runners from East LA who were part of gang histories. We had people from the Arctic Village. We had people, that's we represented very much what our communities are, right? There's a lot of drug abuse. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of things that we had to correct or had to find healing. And so we joined this run. Some of us joined this run so that we could learn from our elders. We were trying to get back to our story so that we can cleanse. And so, yeah, being on the run and being in the forest and sleeping in the forest for long periods at a time, like that itself is a natural cleansing. But then being in nature, connecting with the animals, connecting with people, gave us the courage, gave us the power to try to find cleansing. And so, yeah, there's a lot of pain on the run. We weren't perfect, but we were putting in the work. And that's the story I wanted to put out there. Like, hey, there's no such thing as a superhero. There's no such thing as a perfect human being. But look, there's people out there who are putting in the work. I, for one, found healing. That there was a lot of male figures and role models out there for me who spoke so beautifully about their emotions, who spoke so beautifully about the things that they were working on. And I came from a very cowboy tradition where men don't talk. That had this idea of what, to be a man was to be tough, and and hold it all in, and here I was with men who were doing the opposite, where they're like just this talking about very sensitive, beautiful, loving things that I found very healing, and very unloading of a lot of weight, and I feel like I can talk about these things with people who are putting in that work. And so yeah, it was a very special thing for me. But it was, it was messy. We weren't
Mm.
we weren't perfect.
And of course, this run is not like, let's say, the Boston or New York Marathon that you have police protecting and making sure you are safe. You encounter a mountain lion. You had people throwing rocks at you. So, can you tell us about the dangers itself of the run?
Oh yeah, no, every day was different, and we were running in very different terrains every day. We were running through trails in the mountains, and can't people running past, we were running through bear country and encountering bears, and encountering cougars, and we ran through big cities. We ran through highways. We ran through Mexico City, and where we were dodging multi-lane traffic, and roads with no shoulders. And every day was, it was scary. And we were running through territories, racist, very racist regions where they didn't want us there, and so there's attempts to run us over. There was so every day was a test while you were doing what you were doing. And there was a lot in Mexico too. Sometimes people just didn't really, know what we were doing. Were protecting themselves, or they were questioning who we were. Or so yeah, we were running through very hot desert climates. So we were really we really had to find find our ground. We really had to find that fire within us, and to continue. But what reminded me were my parents' story. If they could do it, I could do it. Right? They were young. They didn't know the language. They came up to the United States, and I just wanted to honor what it meant to be a migrant. I wanted to be part of that journey, but knowing full well that I was in a much more privileged position of pulling out, that I was born in the United States, that I didn't have to be there, and so, whereas my parents had no choice. And so trying to get as close as that reality as possible, and finding healing.
Right. Well, you and your group, you are in a battle to preserve your culture and tradition. But let's face it, there is a constant assimilation, and people are just being more connected with the new technologies, and there is native culture slowly are dying. And not only are they dying by itself, but also as we read not too long ago on they have been killed. We read about the residential schools in British Columbia where 215 bodies of Native Americans were found. And this is in a process of deprive them of their culture. I wonder what's your take on the future of Native American cultures and tradition?
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that, yeah, that it there's always been an existential threat, right, to our people, minorities. It's like, but I honestly feel that we are in a great opportunity right now, technology, or otherwise. That I think I think we are no longer dying. You know what I mean? Like, I think, yeah, we are at a constant assault, but I think we are showing now in full numbers that we are out there, that we are actually taking back our lands in a way that's inclusive, in a way that's healing to our communities. I think there's platforms now for people to express their ideas, stories, people writing their stories now. People are putting it to paper, people writing the books. I think the conversations are being had, and I think for me, I see that as a very powerful direction for our people. That I think we're seeing the numbers that we are out there, that and in large numbers doing good work. So yeah, it's because we've been displaced. It's because we've been, a lot of, destroyed and killed, and we are trying to hold on to those histories, those very tragic histories that are still coming to play, in the Secogma communities, and that is a very sad and dark history. But I think what people are doing now, I think is very powerful, and I think it speaks to our abilities to adapt. We know how to adapt. We've
Mm.
been doing it all our lives. Now we're seeing our story out there, and when we see our story out there, we're coming out of hiding. We're coming out and we're fighting. We're fighting for our children. We're fighting for our youth, and so in our communities. And so, I think the direction that we're heading into is a powerful one, and I think movements like the Peace and Dignity Journeys are bringing light to the numbers and how we are adapting. Like I said, we had runners from the Bay Area. We've adapted, yeah, and like again, like what it means to be indigenous, what it means to be Latino, what it means to be, there's so many layers to who we are, right? And so here we are, coming from an immigrant background with parents, going to school, going to college, traveling, like that just redefines who we are. And so we're trying to harness these new realities and trying to bring it to the table so that we can honor all aspects of what it means to be indigenous. But I don't think we're going away at all. I think we're coming back full force. And I think it's a very beautiful thing because we're bringing communities together. I think we're trying to bring medicine to everybody, not just our own communities. But I do personally. I talk to youth. I like to mentor youth, so I'm putting in the work with the youth that I work with, and I think that's where it's at. And I think a lot of our community is doing that. They're talking to their youth to revive their language, revive their culture, and take pride in it. So.
Right, right. Okay, there is another thread that I see in the horizon, and this thread I think is called cultural theft, which is when non-Native American claim that they are Native American for commercial reasons, for professional reasons. For example, in academia, some people say, "Oh, I have Native ancestors, so give me that grant, which is reserved for minorities." Or the last time I went to a powwow, there were people selling artifacts that were made in China, for example, and I know they were not made by the native community. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on cultural theft or appropriation.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think you just got to ask yourself all the different ways that one can displace a people. You know what I mean? And I think if you are robbing people of their story, or if you're robbing them of their place, of space, their platform, like that is an injustice, right? Like for me, I'm what I try to do with this book is try to create a platform, try to help amplify other people's voices so that when people have questions, they can reach out and go to these communities and have them speak for themselves. You know what I mean? And like, so I think that we need to challenge why we take on inappropriate, like what is it that you're doing with that? Because um that is something that is part of the erasure. That is part of the displacement. That is, we are um, taking the opportunities of other people's to tell their stories. And I think that's where I land. Is essentially it's like um, doing what we can not to rob people of their opportunity to bring their medicine and tell their story the right way. You know what I mean? And so I think it's a tricky one, to be honest. I think for me, like, with my, like Mexican heritage, it's like I'm telling my story the way I wanted, that was authentic to me. And I'm so glad and thankful that there's been so much reception, positive reception to the story, because I didn't know how it was going to be received, being, because I wanted to tell the story that I never could read myself. And I don't want, and I don't know how I feel about people writing the story, my story for me. You know what I mean? And we all got to tell our own story. And I think we got to take advantage of the opportunities that are available to us to do that. But yeah, I guess I don't know how much more I could talk about.
Okay, well, Noe, this is I cannot thank you enough for you sharing your journey, not only your physical journey of doing the race, but the spiritual journey of finding yourself and your culture and being more connected to the land. I wonder if you could tell us one more time the title of the book and where can people follow you and find out more about you.
Yeah, so the book, that I have here is a 6,000-mile marathon through North America's stolen land. Um, is my memoir, and I'm on Instagram, social media, Noe Alvarez 509. And yeah, just reach out. I'm constantly posting things out there. And I'm excited. It's been an honor. It's a conversation starter, and that's all I wanted. I wanted people to come to the table and have conversations about what it means to run. And for me, it's about carrying your community forward. It's about dedicating things greater than yourself. And so, with that in mind, I think that'll bring us a lot of medicine, because I think that's, we're in a messy place right now in our world. And so I think when we can think about those things, I think we'll go in a better direction.
And one more question about the title. Well, we all know that it's stolen land, but how do you come up with that title that you wanted to highlight that this land was stolen?
It's about reclaiming the story. It's about
Mm.
correcting our past. It's about accountability, right? It's about, because we won't be able to heal if we keep telling ourselves lies. You know what I mean? And I think we need to confront the injustices first and sit with that pain. And so much of my writing, I put in very detail about what it's like to work in the warehouses, what it's like to be in grueling working conditions. I want people to see. And so part of it is in the title. Part of it in the title is, let's start correctly. Let's start honestly, and then
Mm.
let's work from that.
Noe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.